Welcome to Insight, everyone. I'm Nnamdi Odipo. On this episode, I will attempt to get some fresh perspectives on leadership, governance, and development, three key elements intrinsically linked and connected with the survival of any nation. Again, we will bring up issues regarding the socio-political evolution of the Nigerian youth and how the increasing clamor and agitations for inclusiveness in policy decision-making processes can accommodate consensus building rather than spark violence. And guess who is back? Elizabeth Omori is here on Insight. She's back. Well, first of all, welcome back. And tell me, I hope you had a fun holiday anyways. Do tell. What is the unique relationship between Nigeria and China in the last 50 years? How has that been?
Well, 50 years of mutual trust, very, very strong partnership and development. On the discussion program, we will examine China-Nigeria relations politically, culturally, and trade-wise, as well as how it relates to the African continent.
Very well then. Let's begin with the discussions. Certain experiences culminating from political events of the last 12 years in Nigeria have demonstrated some facts about leadership. Leadership fosters change. It is value-based as well as being a group process. And finally, I know for a fact that we can all be potential leaders as well. I'm about to find out if my first guest agrees with these analysis. Ben Etiaba joins me via Zoom from Enugu, Southeast Nigeria. He's a chartered accountant and a social commentator. Ben has been you've been quite vocal on your perception of leadership and how leadership can help shape the destiny of a society. Welcome to Insight.
Thank you so much, Nnamdi. I'm quite happy and delighted to be a part of this program.
Incidentally, I came across clips of some of your appearances at the TEDx program here in Nigeria, where you had some rather interesting analogy of how quality leadership can be forged, built, and nurtured. We'll get around to that in a bit, but let's begin by laying the groundwork on how leadership can meet development challenges. I have often argued that the Western model of leadership that we have copiously replicated here in Nigeria seems to have not succeeded in providing the desired answers to perennial challenges confronting Nigeria. And there are quite a number of examples. Isn't it possible to mold a unique system of leadership which aligns with our peculiarities and can best address our challenges?
I actually am not sure if I agree with you that the Western style of leadership cannot help us. And we're all leaders. Anyone can lead, depending on the position you find yourself. Leadership is just about the same anywhere in the world. It doesn't matter if you're leading your clan, if you're leading your local government or the state or the nation. All you are trying to do is to give direction, to take your people from where they are to where they should be. So you need to have the right leader to be able to do that and to be able to achieve the desired results.
So you don't think we could, considering some we have different cultures. Say, let's take the U.S. democracy, for instance. And aren't there peculiarities that we could have taken, experiences from our culture, that we could have taken to mold our leadership style, at least?
Okay, if you're talking about U.S. democracy, of course, they practice the presidential system, which is what we're practicing now. Indeed. But you have to also realize that before that, in the 60s, when we gained independence, it was the British parliamentary system that we practiced.
Very
yes.
True.
And that worked, to me, sort of far better for us because it is less expensive to run.
Okay.
You have a prime minister who's just the first amongst equals, just an MP. But with this presidential system, we seem to be wasting an awful lot of resources sustaining it. So yes, I agree with you that some of these things cannot work for us, and as Africans, we seem not to be able to help ourselves when it comes to greed. We are not able to work out that there should be a limit to greed. So that makes the system very, very, very expensive if we're copying them. But the essence of leadership, like I said earlier, is still the same. In any system, you can still achieve the same thing. But when you now begin to think and to talk about the styles of leadership and the practice we're adopting, I agree with you completely that this is not helping us at all.
Interestingly, you just also raised the issue of the size of government and, the cost of government. So you agree with those who will say our style and our size and cost is rather too large?
So large. I lived in England for 25 years, and I could see precisely how they sort of run things over there. The average governor here has a convoy of about 20 vehicles. But I can tell you that the British Prime Minister or the Queen doesn't move in a convoy that is more than 3 vehicles at a time. So there's so much waste. That's one aspect of it. If you look at the size of the personnel involved in running the system, it's just absolute waste. And you're not talking about adding value or creating wealth or taking you to where, where you could create enough to dispense social amenities to the citizens. Just there, patronage, dispensing of patronage and enjoying the largesse of office. It is so expensive, and believe me, we can't afford to go on like this for much longer.
While on this subject, I'd like to have your take on a suggestion recommending the need for Nigerians to urgently reflect back on the values, visions, and aspirations of our founding fathers, and the institutionalization of leadership training centers at local government levels across the country as a platform for the emergence of credible leaders at both, at local, states, and national levels in Nigeria. Can that reignite, broad-based patriotism and perhaps grow a new generation of Nigerians with, well, maybe not absolute, but with near absolute love for the fatherland?
I don't think that is the problem. I think what has happened is that over the years, we have, everything is run with corruption in mind. If you set up those training centers and intend, for that to achieve the aim you have just expressed, I believe that you will not achieve that. Okay. Because first, there will be avenues for siphoning of money. People will sign off, potential leaders will sign up for it and, take off to do whatever they have to do. Fake names will be registered. So I think the major problem we have and we're grappling with when it comes to leadership is corruption. It is greed. I mentioned it earlier. We don't seem to realize that, when you're killing the goose that's laying the golden eggs, the eggs will soon not be there anymore. So everything is corrupt. And until we have a leadership that is ready and a system ready to deal with corruption, I don't think much can be achieved. Believe me, I'm not being pessimistic. Yes. Indeed, I'm an optimist. But I see corruption as the major problem we're going through. And we need a leadership that will be willing to take on that issue head on and deal with it.
The current administration actually ran on that ticket and has been doing a lot to turn the tide, in the direction that we desire. But how do we now, as a matter of culture, begin to change and change people's perception towards corruption? Because for us now, it's a cultural thing, right? You've just made allusions to that. How can we begin to change that culture of corruption and make people better appreciate the value for nationalism, the value for national interest rather than self-interest?
Okay, culture is the way we do things. And when you begin to do the wrong things and keep doing them and perpetuating them, they become part of the culture. Now, to move away from that, you need a leadership that is selfless. You need an altruistic leader who lead and live by example. Okay?
Yes.
Can I just give you an example of what I'm just describing? If you listen, if you look back and sort of looked up what happened to the Eastern region, for instance, in the 60s, in the 1960s, between 1960 and 66, we had a leader, a premier, Dr. M.I. Abara, who led us by example. Because he was not corrupt, because he was selfless, he was very altruistic, he was able to lead by example, and he achieved a lot for us. And once you have the right person at the top, believe me, it will trickle down. And although in the 60s, corruption wasn't as bad as it is now. But we need a leadership that will take it head on. The president, the current leadership in our country are doing the much they can. But we need to do a lot more, to get this thing right.
I totally hear you, and I agree to some extent, and I also do know that, and it's a very popular saying that the people deserve the kind of leaders that they get. And in the opening, I did make allusions to the fact that we're all potential leaders. Leaders are drawn from the people. You and I could become leaders tomorrow. And so it behoves on each and every one of us to begin to change our reorientation and our values, personal, individual values, and that would trickle. But then let's move ahead now, and I'd like to get your opinion on the disturbing dimensions of the problem of insecurity in Nigeria. There is the farmers' herdsmen violence, there's insurgency in the northeast, there's communal conflicts and violence, as well as kidnapping and armed robbery across parts of the country. Theoretically, do you think our national security policy is attuned to internal security challenges in 21st century Nigeria? Before we even begin to consider other aspects of the policy, such as we defending the African unity and independence?
Okay, first I have to concede the fact that I'm not a security personnel, but I can tell you.
Very well, I do know that. I'm not putting you on the spot here. I just would like your opinion.
Yeah, I'll tell you what I do think.
Yes, please.
I don't believe that the problem is with the policy. But I do believe that it has everything to do with the implementation of the policy.
Okay.
Because even if you have the best policy in the world and you're not implementing it the right way, it cannot work. Okay. And everything, including national security, has been hijacked for personal gains. Okay. Now, these are things that are reported, and this is not something I'm saying because I have any information that you don't have access to. Okay. Kidnapping, just 2 days ago, I was in Anambra. I spend most of my time in Anambra now.
Okay.
And I'm from Nnewi. One of the 4 traditional heads in Nnewi, the Obi of Urago, the second in command in my town, was kidnapped, coming from a neighboring town. Okay. You find these incidents everywhere. I'm glad you talked about insecurity in the northeast. Agitations in the southwest and the south-south. This is everywhere in the country. It's not, sort of restricted to a particular region. The only thing is that in each region, you have their own peculiarity and the type of insecurity problem existing there. I'll give you another example. And when we now begin to talk about implementation of policies, I drove from Enugu and Nnewi, Anambra to Enugu yesterday. In between Oka and Enugu, I encountered over 30 police and army checkpoints.
Okay.
30. Okay? And these personnel are there on the streets, quite frankly, extorting money from the motorists. Okay? While all of these insecurity challenges are going on. Okay? Our security personnel have gone from what they should be doing to what they ought not to be doing. We have laid down policies, I'm sure, for them. Do you think they're implementing it the right way? I'm not sure there's any policy that has told them.
Well, all things being equal, if security personnel living up to the billings and doing what they should do, do we also have roles to play as community members, as Nigerians?
Yes, you did say that as a people, we get the leadership we deserve.
Yeah, very
it's like
true.
that anywhere in the world. We can protest.
Peacefully,
But how many of us are doing that? Are we patient enough and steadfast enough to protest? I'm not talking about violent rioting. I'm talking about civil protests.
Great.
Are we able to do that and sustain it? Nobody is interested in it. At the end of the day, you're thinking, oh, this is not my problem. It's not, if they can solve it, it's not my headache. In other climes, they'll come out and protest peacefully. And the people in authority will review the implementation of those policies. But in Nigeria, we're so impatient. We just want to, sort of get through all of that and sort of, what can we do?
You know, for a large chunk of Nigerians, it's still rather frustrating to see that in spite of well-meaning efforts by not just these administrations, successive administrations, we're still confronted with the issues of unemployment, inequality, poverty, a fraudulent electoral process. I mean, corruption. You brought up the issue of corruption. And of course, there's still the question about our federalism or true federalism. There's also the issue of insecurity, porous borders, religious and ethnic crisis and intolerance. I mean, I could go on and on. We don't trust ourselves, and ethnicity is a common card that we often play here. How can we build trust and do away with ethnic nationalism, possibly, I mean, nurturing this union that we have and arresting agitations, more like nipping them in the bud?
Okay, I don't think patriotism in terms of ethnicity is the wrong thing at all. Again, not just in Nigeria, anywhere else. I believe that you have to love your own ethnic grouping as much as you love
above your national interest.
No, not above national interest. I don't believe in separatism. I believe, in fact, I'm more of a nationalist than a separatist. Okay, there is enormous strength in diversity. I will never subscribe to pulling out of Nigeria. I believe that there is unity, and once we can pull together as a nation, we can achieve a lot more. There is strength in numbers, strength in diversity, and I think that Nigeria can do well in being fair to all parties concerned. The problem we have is that Nigerians feel, of whatever tribe, of whatever ethnicity, ethnic tribe, nation, believe that there is no level playing field. Okay? Once we are seen to be fair to each other, Nigeria as a nation will be stronger for it. And so there must be a level playing field. Let nobody, I don't want to use that word, over abused word, marginalization, because everybody will just get up and say we are being marginalized. Okay? Nothing is ever perfect. But I think let everybody feel a sense of belonging. I'll give you another one. People are not marginalized because of a tribe alone. We have a gang up of the elite ripping off the best, creaming off the best of what Nigeria has to offer. The elite of every tribe. Okay, that is even worse than what is being, ascribed to tribalism. When you have the son of nobody knowing that he can get to and achieve his vision for himself and for his nation in Nigeria without having a godfather, that's when nation building will be gotten right. Okay? So it is not just about tribe, it is about a conspiracy of the elite to disenfranchise the less. And we need to address that as well as looking at the issues of tribe.
Okay, I find your views quite intriguing, so far. But let's see what you think of developments at the state's level and now, and I'll use your home state, Anambra, as focus, not Enugu where you currently are. Incidentally, I worked in Anambra State with the NTA station there for close to a decade, so I know quite a bit about the state and the people there. But please humor me. Let me reel out some of what I know for a fact about Anambra State. For one, I know that the state has almost 100% arable soil. Anambra is rich in natural gas, crude oil, and ceramics. As a matter of fact, for many years now, Prince Arthur Eze and Anambarian, that's how Anambra people refer to themselves, have been touted as the richest Igbo man on earth. So there is absolutely no doubt that the state is blessed and that our people too. But however, potential is not success or accomplishment. How can a state like that, with so much potential, catapult itself to the top of the table in every significant sector of the economy?
Okay, I'll say that Anambra is not doing badly at the moment, but we need to do much better. You've highlighted the potentials we have in terms of wealth, in terms of intellectual property, in terms of natural resources, okay? What we need is a visionary leader who can harness all these potentials together to take Anambra State from where it is now, not to where our people want it to be, but where it should be. Because we have a great opportunity to get it right. We have a great opportunity to leapfrog. I'm not saying we're better than other states, but I'm saying that we're different. And we have all these attributes that can take us to anywhere we want to go. So we need a visionary leadership in Anambra to enable us to realize our full potential. And I believe that we have an opportunity of achieving this in a few months.
Okay, great. Can we stay a bit on the issue of commerce? I mean, even though we've talked about the economy and potential in the area, but like you rightly said, Anambra is known for commerce and is widely known for its large trade and semi-industrialization. How can that sector be repackaged to improve the ease of doing business using policy initiatives?
All right, okay. First of all, I'm from Nnewi.
Okay.
I live in Nnewi, but I have a home in Enugu as well. So from time to time, you find that today I happen to be in Enugu, so that's why I'm speaking to you from Enugu. Nnewi is known as the Taiwan of Africa. I'm sure you know that.
Mm.
We have many industries and many industrialists in Nnewi. And are you still getting me? Are you still seeing me?
Sorry, please go ahead.
Okay. All right, okay, because I lost you for a moment here. And what you do find is that these industries are operating as a result of self-help, personal efforts of the owners, of the business owners. What you do need is a policy, first, for government to provide the infrastructural needs of these industries, okay?
Okay.
So, if possible, go beyond what is happening now, where it is just a collection of ad hoc collection of industries cited haphazardly, to provision of the right infrastructure and the right industrial hub. And we have trade senatorial zones. Have the right industrial hubs in each of these zones. We'll have the right, we'll have the land for it. Anambra is now gas rich. If we can harness that gas potential into energy, that means that we can have 24-hour power supply in Anambra State, okay? And you can imagine what that will do for our industries. If at the moment we are where we are, running on generators, you can imagine what bringing that gas pipeline, giving us the right energy will do. In the right industrial hubs in Anambra State, okay? Doing the bit we can. Government has no business running businesses, but government has a business in providing the enabling environment for the private sector to thrive. And we make money, by the way. This is not a social service. You make money by taxing properly.
Great.
And government will be better for it.
We're fast losing time, yeah, so we need to quickly run along and round off this conversation. Earlier I raised an issue on elections and how we can make them better and more transparent. I reckon the next major state governorship elections to be held, to be conducted in Nigeria is that of Anambra, sometime in November, I believe. So, okay, so
on
as
the 6th of
INEC,
November, Anambra will elect a new governor to replace Governor Obiano.
Indeed, fantastic. So as INEC prepares, we're again reminded of the twin problem of money politics and electoral violence in Anambra State. Can I get your thoughts on what INEC, political parties and civil society, and of course the electorate themselves can do, or the role they can play to help change that narrative and perhaps make these coming elections different? And very quickly too.
All right, okay. I think the electorate will have their own role to play to get serious and shun money politics. Okay, even if that money is given to you, take it and sort of vote for the right person to turn the state around. For INEC will need to get more serious than has ever happened. Increasingly, they've been running more transparent elections, better elections. I came back from Ondo, and they did excellently well in Ondo State. Repeat that feat in Anambra, and especially ensure that election riggers and violators are prosecuted. Because I don't see anybody who's gone to jail for election crimes. Maybe you have, I don't. So it's like you commit all these atrocities during elections and you get away with it because you're doing it on behalf of one godfather or one electoral, a politician or the other. So let us get serious and prosecute these people. And the security agencies should live up to their billing and ensure that these things are implemented. Security is enforced, because sort of, if you don't get security right, the credibility of the election will be in doubt.
Well, I hear you clearly. Well, out of time, but I know you've been based in the UK for quite a bit, and it seems that you're back home for good and getting grounded in the politics. I also didn't know that you have you're from a family with a rich political history, knowing that your mom, Dame Vijay Tiaba, was Nigeria's first female state governor. How is she, by the way? I hope she's doing good.
She's wonderful. She's now known as Mama Nambra. She's wonderful. She's enjoying her retirement. I lived in UK for 25 years. I left at the age of 19, but I came back 14 years ago. So consistently,
so you've been around for a while. Okay, great.
I haven't just come back to run to take part.
Glad to hear that.
I've been living in Nigeria for the last 14 years. I indeed trained my children in Nigeria. So they're as Nigerian as you are.
Good to know that. Well, just before I let you go,
my mom is fine. She's had a bit in politics, so she's just a mother to all now.
Good to hear that as well. Just before I let you go, a quick one. Any thoughts on continuing where your mom stopped in Anambra politics?
Okay, what I'll say, if I say that I want to continue where she stopped, then I'm being unfair to all the leaders after her. I mean, we've had some governors after her, and they've all moved Anambra State forward since then. So what I would rather say is that at the right time...
No, I mean in terms of joining politics now.
No, yes. Breaking news. Just watch out. In the next few days, you'll get some news along those lines that I'll announce. But I think you'll be more like continuing from not where she stopped, but from where Governor Obiano will stop.
Ben Itiaba, chartered accountant and social commentator. It's been a delight speaking with you. I want to thank you so much for coming on Insights, and I'm looking forward to having you on this same show sometime real soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Nami. The pleasure has been mine. I'm delighted to be here.
Coming up next, Elizabeth Omori takes a look at the Nigerian-China relations in the last 50 years.
In 1971, China and Nigeria established diplomatic relations for 50 years, and especially after the establishment of the strategic partnership in 2005, the bilateral cooperation has been a pace-setter in China-Africa cooperation. The relationship between China and Nigeria has reached new heights, bringing tangible benefits to the two countries. Today, we will examine critically the relationship between Nigeria and China for 5 decades. To dwell on the issue, I have Dr. Tunji Ashaolu, Nigeria's representative, AU Economic Social Cultural Council, ECOSOC. Dr. Ashaolu, it's nice to have you on Insights.
Thank you for having me.
And Mr. Innocent Odo, head of Diplomatic Desk, Leadership Newspaper, is also part of this conversation. Mr. Odo, thank you so much for coming on Insights.
Thank you.
I would like to start with Dr. Ashaolu. The past 50 years have significantly enhanced political mutual trust between Nigeria and China. Can we have your thoughts on this?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think since February 10, 1971, that Nigeria has entered into bilateral and diplomatic relations with the China. It has always been smooth since then. And you also agree with me that it's not only Nigeria that is actually benefiting from this relationship. You know that it's Africa as a whole. In 2000 exactly, to be precise, in October, the China also formalized their relationship with the entire union by coming up with what is called the Forums on China and Africa Corporations. And I think since then, the relationships have been all the way smooth. But to step it out to Nigeria, we are talking about Africa, we are talking about Nigeria, and we are talking about Nigeria, we are talking about Africa, constraining the populations and the strength. So whatever that is being done in Nigeria, other African countries, of course, definitely will emulate from the sources. So Nigerians have a very strong relationship in terms of its trade, particularly the economic and the business relation with China. So it has always been win-win situations. But the truth of the matter is they need to also step up the game, because we need to see the more evidence on ground, because the citizens are actually, expanding and are growing on a daily basis.
Okay. All right. Still on you, Dr. Ashaolu. When we talk about trade in Africa, we think Nigeria. So how has this helped to move trade in Africa to greater heights?
Yeah, I think as a new development, the narrative have also been changed. For example, the Africa now is moving towards a common market. We just operationalize what is called the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, which of recent in January come on board. Like I said, that the relationship between the Nigeria is being metamorphosed to the entire Africa. So in a way, in the short while, we will not even be seeing in that the relationship between the China and Nigeria, it is going to be a compulsive or inclusiveness that will now be dealing with Africa as a whole. So Africa is moving towards achieving the Agenda 2063, that is to say the Africa we want, come on or before the end of 2063. So by then, we are expected to see the United States of Africa, where we'll not even be talking about whether Nigeria or China or Togo or wherever, any part of the Africa. So it has to be a relationship that will be between the continent and, of course, the other continent.
Okay. All right, Mr. Odo, China-Nigeria relations, many news reports say is symbiotic. Is this true?
Well, thank you for having me once again. And diplomatic relationship with China has been a very significant milestone in the life of the two great nations. Of course, you know that China being the biggest in terms of population in the world, and Nigeria being the biggest in terms of population in the whole of Africa. So there are similarities, between the two nations. And just like my colleague said, the relationship of 50 years has been of mutual trust, and it has been forward-looking. It has been beneficial also. But then we have to do some sober reflection on the way we are relating with China. Okay. What has been the historical trajectory of this relationship? I'm talking about specifically on individual nations basis. China, like we all know, emerged from the shackles of colonialism, just like Nigeria and other African countries. And then, of course, after, let's say, the 1978 revolution in China, China became a world superpower in terms of economy, in terms of politics and all that. And there's a reason China became a superpower today in the world. And it has to do with purposeful leadership, cohesion, understanding of the variables that make for a national development. The Chinese government, under the President Deng Xiaoping in 1978, initiated that development trajectory that we all celebrate today in China rather. So you can see there's a succession of successes, succession of a strategy to engage the world, to engage Africa in all ramifications, be it political, be it on economic basis. And so, back to your question, specifically speaking now, has it been what it ought to be? I would say I'm not too positive in that sense, because if you ask me about China's history, I know that in just about 2020, the Chinese are celebrating about lifting about 800 million people out of poverty, which means in no distant time, poverty will become history in China. How did they do that? By purposeful leadership. And if we want to relate really in a manner that Nigeria will benefit in a strong sense of the word, Nigeria has to build her infrastructure. Nigeria has to build her economy. Nigeria has to build her social, industrial and human capacity to meet up to the challenges of the modern time. That is what this relationship is opening up for Nigeria to learn. An opportunity that China has presented. China is that idea, China is that nation, and China is an example for everybody to copy. And that is what Nigeria has to learn from China in this instance. May I add one thing, please, before I cut? There's a trade volume now exists between Nigeria and China, which is about $19.25 billion between Nigeria and China, which is a huge trade volume between both countries. Mm-hmm. It is worth celebrating. But at the end of the day, when we break it down to balance of trade between both countries, you discover that China still has an advantage over Nigeria. Why does it have advantage over Nigeria? Because of its industrial capacity at low cost. So when Chinese products are produced in China at low cost, they find ready markets in Nigeria and they are flooded here in Nigeria. So why don't we also take advantage of the huge Chinese market, send our product instead of sending industrial products instead of primary product to China? That's what they do. That's what makes the difference.
Mr. Odo, I'm happy you are a media practitioner, but really, what role has the media played in all of this in promoting the relationship between China and Nigeria?
Okay, the media, Nigerian media has been luckily very vibrant media in Nigeria. They have actually taken opportunity that the Chinese experience has offered to relate it to our own experience. I have been to China twice myself, and I have seen the success story of China. And a lot of other colleagues of mine have visited China in one way or another to learn from the experience of China. I think when we came back here, what it then means is that the media, as a very vital sector of the Nigerian life, will have to understand the variables, understand the creativity, understand the imaginativeness, and know how to relate it to the Nigerian experience. Why am I saying so? The Nigerian people are very vibrant people. The Nigerian people learn fast. The Nigerian people are strategic. But the only thing, however, is that the Nigerian people probably have not gotten it right in terms of or harnessing the variables that we have here to make for a great nation that we all desire. So, but I think the media, they are playing a very important role in disseminating information about the experiences, not just China, but even some of the developed nations of the world.
Thank you for your thoughts on that. Now, Dr. Ashaolu, articles by some Nigerian newspapers reveal that in recent years, the two countries have enjoyed exchanges and mutual trust, putting China-Nigeria relations on a fast-track development. This bond looks unbreakable. Bilaterally, how can we sustain the gains?
Yeah, I think it's not about just exchanging dollars or exchanging money or trading. We need to also step it down into the life of the citizen. For example, the aspiration number one of the Agenda 2060 also talk about a prosperous Africa that's based on sustainable growth, sustainable development. How do we sustain this? It's about using our own people to drive that agenda, to talk about our own development. We have everything that we could in Nigeria or in Africa as well. So how do we now balance that trade? So we need to draw the line where we make use of the Nigeria people, and of course where we make use of the Chinese people.
Dr. Ashaolu, I'm not done with you yet. You represent Nigeria, the AU Economic Social Cultural Council. Now, is this relationship all about trade?
No, it is not about trade. The AU ECOSOC is one of the organs of the African Union, particularly to provide an advisory opinions to the Union in terms of their programs, in terms of their policies and framework, and how it's being done in Africa. So our major role is to stand between the gap, the government and the citizen.
Okay.
What is being done in the African Union that is not going well in the lives of the citizen, we stand with the gap and provide advisory opinion. So our role cut across the trade and industry, the economic affairs, and politicals and what have you. So we have always issued a lot of advisory opinion even to the government, and now they can also sustain some of their programs and framework and policies in member states.
All right, Mr. Odo, how has the media been able to strengthen these ties between Nigeria and China?
Now, we've had the cultural and media exchanges in the past between Nigerian media practitioners and the Chinese, in so many exchange programs, of course, being sponsored sometimes by the Chinese government. And that has given us an opportunity to understand the very definition of development in terms of the Chinese experience of development and how they attained the developmental strides that they have made in the last couple of years. In less than 40 years, for instance, like I said, in 1978, when the opening up of the Chinese economy started under Deng Xiaoping, they never looked back. It was more like a forward-looking country, given an insight as to what it takes to build a nation with capacity, to build people with interest in governing. Build governing structures that promote national interest in terms of what they call science and technology. That is only what makes a difference, and that is what I think the media should, focus on. I give another example. You see, the Chinese right now, have introduced even not just FOCAC, like he said, the Forum for China-Africa Cooperation, FOCAC, yes, that started in 2000. There's another one called the Belt and Roads Initiative, started in 2013, all over Africa and all over parts of the world. About 70 countries are now keen into that Belt and Roads Initiative. Why is it so? China wants to connect the world with infrastructure. It's more like infrastructure connectivity around the world. So you can see it's a very big project, and it's at the heart of the Chinese foreign policy. That tells you how serious they are in connecting the rest of the world through this initiative, through this program. And I think we as the media practitioners, this should be the forte of the media. We should take it up as a, something we can, like a crusade, around Africa, around Nigeria, and all parts of the world, because the Chinese are up for business, and they mean business.
All right, Mr. Odio, I would like to ask you this because you head the diplomatic desk of your organization. Now, is this relationship the strongest Nigeria has, talking about diplomatic ties?
I think I may not be able to say it's the strongest, but probably going to be the most cordial in terms of Nigeria's history of diplomacy. Because the Chinese, we didn't have any experience of colonial humiliation, from China, just like we had, with our past colonial masters. So Chinese, of course, they also had the same colonial humiliation experience like us. So theirs is more like a union of shared prosperity, a relationship of shared prosperity. That is what they are chasing in Africa. But the thing is that it is not just a union of shared prosperity, but who gains out of that, kind of conceptualization of ideas and relationship. And that is why I said Africans and Nigeria, to be precise, have to understand what it means to formulate policies based on industrial development, based on human capital development, and based on strategy to build the resources of the nation. Thank God we already have the resources. We no longer need, we will say we are potentially rich, as they said. All we need now is to harness these resources, and the elite, they must do this work, and they must do it now.
Dr. Ashaolu, I would like to hear your position on that.
Well, I think he's saying the right thing. So that was why I said that we need to take it, into the next step of where we are right now, if you want to also get it right. At the same, you can't be building your house at the same time you're also scattering it. We have the framework that we call Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. We need to also focus more on this. How do we now put our house together to have that common market? So it's another area that we also need to look into. Where, in as much that we are building on the relationship between the Nigerians and China, we must not also forget of our own. So we need to also build it to also make sure that Africa also stand on their own. Particularly, achieving that Agenda 2063 is very key.
All right. Gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for coming on Insight.
Thank you
very much.
Just before we wrap up this episode, I would like to take us back to the issue of governance, but this time with a focus on how the Nigerian youth factors in the equation, especially with recent events and agitations in certain quarters. How best to build consensus and make our youth population have a sense of being part of the policy decision-making processes. Arun Ahmed Amin is from the Committed Youth for Better Nigeria. He's actually the National Secretary of the organization. Thank you so much for joining me to discuss this issue.
Thank you for having me. Good afternoon.
Yeah, Arun, if there were doubts before now that the Nigerian youth is vibrant, and let me use the words of President Buhari just a couple of days back, imbued with energy and resourceful, well, that is all gone now. Well, I'm not trying to put you on the spot here, but are you happy or dissatisfied with how active the Nigerian youth is, particularly now, on the issue of governance and leadership at the moment?
Well, at the moment, considering what has happened last October, one will think, after all that violence, after the government and everyone has started to calm down and talk about moving forward, that we will actually see a real path that will become peaceful for everyone. Unfortunately, that hasn't happened. And as we all know that the case is still in court, investigation over the murders that happened in Lagos, and then suddenly there was a court order to open up the toll gates, and some of the youths did not agree with this decision. And we all know what has happened on Saturday, and I guess we're not really going towards where we are supposed to go to. And this is basically one of the problems we're having in this country. The youth outnumber the ideology that we're trying to put into their hands. We are in the 21st century. Technology is rising. Everybody is frustrated. We understand that. In order to get peace, we have to understand that the future generation is what we're looking at right in the open. the calls for division, the calls for hatred, those have to be eliminated, because in Nigeria, we all agree and accept that Nigeria is one nation. Regardless of where we come from, what religion we believe in, we are supposed to live peacefully with one another. And that is not happening at the moment. In fact, everything is going backwards.
Well, I wouldn't. Well, I don't know what you mean by going backwards, but I do get that we have challenges. And
exactly.
I'm sure you have been monitoring events in Lagos. You actually did preempt, my question, and so I'll just go ahead and. I mean, you've talked about since last October and what has transpired since then.
Yeah.
But give me a sense of where you think the youths are. I mean, right now in their thinking. I mean, considering all that is playing out or that has played out and where we're headed to, isn't this time? Shouldn't we create a platform or a forum for dialogue and perhaps begin to reach some sort of consensus? I mean, for both sides now. Consensus is actually supposed to be a conflict management strategy. Shouldn't we dialogue and reach some sort of agreement at this point in time?
That's one of the things that is really lacking in the country. And one of the
because
ways that
Arun, I'm sorry to interject here.
Yes.
We're not seeing these aggrieved and protesting youths are going to come to the table for talks.
Well, there's actually a reason for that, I will say. And you don't have to listen to any side to be able to see these reasons. These reasons are the fear of the kind of treatment they expect to be seen. And I was watching the news on Saturday when the things that was going on at the toll gate in Lagos was happening, and I could hear where it was saying that the police are willing to arrest any group of people that is more than 2 people. So now, if people are trying to speak about their rights in their own country and they're not allowed to do that, it leads to frustration. Frustration in terms of the fact that Nigeria has a teeming youth of brilliant, innovative and creative people all over the world. If you go out, and someone like me who's very interested in astronomy and aerospace, and I see what NASA of America and Europe are doing, and I can see that we have Nigerians in all these places. We have Nigerians in all these places where you see great stuff. Now, you can imagine the number of intellectual property that is owned in this Nigeria, and that is the one reason why it's important for us to come together and dialogue and find a kind of platform to allow this mindset that is very creative to move forward in order to build our own nation instead of frustrating them to either get out of here or turn against each other.
Arun, I'm going to stay on the issue of consensus building, and now it's an agreeable platform, for opposing sides.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, and for a while now I've been wondering, isn't it counterproductive not to want to talk to the other side of a conflict or disagreement? And now, I'm very specific about the protesters now.
Okay, yeah, it is actually. But like I said, it has to be, both sides has to come all the way to the middle.
I agree. Government
has to be willing to allow this to happen. And it's not about talking the talk without walking the walk.
So you think the panel set up in states isn't enough?
No, I don't think it's enough.
Set up in states?
I don't think it's enough, because you have to set it in such a way that you're not telling them to, okay, come round, but make sure that we don't get to you, because something has happened before that is very bad and we don't like it, and everyone is not given the right reasons or the right picture of what they expect in this kind of dialogue. It has to be very clear. The youth, too, they have to be willing to come out, and I'm sure they want to, but the government has to make the first real step. And I would not say that the presidency hasn't done enough, but I will say that Nigeria is a very large country, and with so many different ethnic groups and ideologies. What we are supposed to do is make sure the law enforcement follows the whole human right thing to the letter.
Okay.
And that's the only way.
So you, in essence, you actually think more should be done by government. I mean, that they should probably match the right strategy to the situation in the handling of the entire disagreement. And I mean, even though we know that the government has met previous demands made by protesters or these youth sometime last October, but you still think that's not enough to manage or resolve the situation? Arun?
I don't think so. There's so much desperation in this country. All right, one example I'll tell you is this, and it's like a metaphor. A person get a broken phone and wants to get it fixed. As he gets out, goes look for the place. What he finds is a place where he can get it fixed. And this youth, but he doesn't see, or his mindset doesn't tell him that, oh, is this particular set of people that I'm looking for, or this ideology. It's youth. They're in all the religions, they're in all the tribes, and they are all facing the same kind of problem. Now, as we look at the next generation being them, we really honestly cannot expect them to make the first move. They are willing. We could tell that they are willing because they came out on Saturday to the toll gate simply because that's the only way they know to fight without violence. And the reason why they did that, according to what I've seen, and I can tell that it's logically what they expect to do, is because the case itself has not been resolved yet. There's a murder trial going on, as it was claimed, but it hasn't been finalized yet. And so they felt it was wrong to open up the toll gates while this is ongoing. And even in that case, if you see the number of people that have been arrested, that does not paint a very good picture in terms of moving forward. So there's nothing wrong with saying that the youth also needs to come forward, which I totally agree with, but the government has to do more.
Arun, I've been trying to brush up on, my history of protest here in the country, and I noticed quite surprisingly that even as far back as the Aba Women's Riot of 1929, I think, there's always an underlying issue, often justifiable by the aggrieved party for why they are protesting. In practical terms, I mean, how can we begin to engage these young adults, young men, women, and help them channel this vibrancy, these energies that they have into positive ventures, that can contribute, meaningfully to our development as a country, as a nation?
There's a lot our government can do to give this youth a chance to move forward. And it is in terms of the fact that technology has never stood in one place. It has always been moving forward. I know that there are people who sit down and looking at emerging technologies. Now, our youths are very, very versed in modern technology. When the government says it will have a hub, it will have a kind of a location for people with the mindset for innovations and creativity to come up and develop themselves, we cannot say we will design it to the Nigerian level. There is no Nigerian level to technology. There is a standard level everywhere in the world. India got her independence only 3 years before us. But right now, India, not just nuclear power, has to go to other planets, and it's always improving. The whole world wants intellectual property from India, from mathematics to computer programming. And so many Nigerian youths are.
So in essence, you're saying help these young adults with, an environment
of the NTA.